A message to police and military employees regarding Frank Meyers' farm. On November 29th, we received news that 85-year-old Ontario farmer Frank Meyers had finally caved to government threats and signed a contract to sell his farm to the Department of National Defense. I've spent a lot of time thinking about Frank's situation since then, and I've put a lot of consideration into what my response should be. Here it is. First, Frank Meyers' ultimate decision to submit to the government demands that he sell his farm is not to be condemned. At the end of the day, Frank had to make that ultimately difficult decision in order to preserve his own life and to mitigate the harm being done to him and his family by the government. And when I say by the government, I mean the military, the police, court officials, elected officials. Let me be clear. The contract that Frank signed with the Department of National Defense is not valid, and it must not be taken as a voluntary agreement. Frank signed that contract under duress, with the guns of the state pointed at him. He said, "They threatened me." That's what it was. They told us that if I didn't take the money that they wanted to give me, that they'd go to court and we wouldn't get half of what they offered me. That's what they said. Now, notwithstanding the clear lack of consent, I don't believe for a second that the individuals responsible for the initial decision to expropriate Frank's farm are going to change their mind in some unprecedented act of humanity and just leave Frank Meyers alone. And they're not going to change their mind because they suddenly have a respect for the need of consent in a situation like this, or because they were so moved by all the letters and emails and tweets that we sent them. I mean, as well-intentioned as our efforts have been, I don't think they're going to change their mind. And now, since I first wrote about the Meyers case, I've taken some heat from other supporters of Frank for my condemnation of the military members and police officers for their role in the expropriation of Frank's farm. My critics told me that, military members and police, both in general and specifically the ones involved with Frank's case, that they probably don't even agree with the government's decision to expropriate the farm, and that they're just following orders. This is my message to government employees, police, military members, court officials, military contractors even. If it's true that you don't agree with the government's decision to expropriate Frank's farm, then you have to realize that it's not the government stealing and forcefully evicting Frank from his farm. It's individuals, including yourself, who are acting to make this theft possible. If, as it's been presented to me, that it's not the enforcers or the administrators of laws and government policies who really want to steal Frank's farm, it's just, a small group of immoral decision makers, then why is it that the good men and women who I'm told work for the government don't refuse to carry out these immoral and criminal orders? Why aren't you refusing? If you're a police officer who is enforcing the Department of National Defense's claimed ownership of Frank's farm, and if you would be willing and ready to arrest Frank Meyers or one of his guests as a trespasser on his own farm, then you're a party to theft. If you're a court employee who would work to support a process which would see Frank Meyers or any of his invited guests prosecuted as trespassers, you're a party to theft. If you're a military member who would work on the new Joint Task Force training center base once it's built on Frank's farm, and you would willingly work there, knowing that it's been stolen from Frank, you're a party to theft. And even if you're a military contractor or like a local resident who would work on the base after it's built or work to build the base, you're a party to theft and you're guilty of profiting from the proceeds of a criminal act. I implore you, the good government employees, if you exist, please affirm your morality and refuse to act to support theft. Refuse to act to support the theft of Frank Meyers' farm. It may not sit well with you to admit it, but if you don't refuse to act to support the theft of Frank Meyers' farm, then you're not a good person as you would claim to be. You're a thief and a criminal.